Welcome to the Living the Dream podcast with Curveball. If you believe, you can achieve. Welcome to the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, a show where I interview guests that teach, motivate, and inspire. Today we're going to be talking about transforming the human potential, as I am joined by Transformational coach, success strategist coach, and author, Scott Allan. Scott's books are in 15 languages, and he focuses on transforming the human potential and, helping people be successful. So, Scott, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Why don't you start off by telling everybody a little bit about yourself?
Sure thing. So my name is Scott Allan. I work as an author, motivational speaker, and entrepreneur. So I have been publishing books for about a decade. And I'll just give you a little bit of insight into how this came about. So originally I'm from Canada, but I have been living in Japan for about 26 years now. So it's been a little while. And when I was back in Canada, back in the day, I got to a point in my life where I decided that I had to change things because I wasn't in a place in my life where I wanted to be. And I knew inside that there's so much more that I could have been doing. So at the time, I was working as an electrical engineer, living in Vancouver, had lots of friends, had a good life, but something inside me was just hungry for a different life. Not something that wasn't the normal experience, so to speak. So one day I'm in the bookstore and walking through, and I came across a book called Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins, which I think most people are aware of Tony. You might have seen his books or presentations, but something told me at that moment that I had to buy that book. And at the time I was reading some other self-help books and going through some personal transformation. I wanted to make changes in my life. But when I picked up this book, I took it home, I read through it in a few days. And when I got to the section on goal setting, I started to set my goals for myself, which is something that I'd never done before. So within a couple of days, I had a bunch of goals written out, and I started putting ideas up on my wall and pictures of places I wanted to go. And I didn't know where any of this was going, but within a week, I had this big vision board on my wall. And basically what it turned out to be was all the things that I wanted to do, such as writing books, traveling the world, which was a new one. I'd never conceived of doing that before. I was happy to just kind of stay in my little bubble. But from this, I guess I'll call it an inner experience, I realized that there were a lot of things I wanted to do with my life. So that vision board was really the roadmap for what I was going to build in the future. And every day I kept adding more to it. I decided that from that date, it was probably way back in 97, and I came to Japan in 98, but I decided one day that I was just going to go travel the world. Didn't know how it was going to happen. But one thing I learned in life is that you don't need to figure out the how right away. You just need to decide what it is that you're going to do and decide when you're going to do it. At least give yourself a rough time frame. And I said, within 1 year, I'm going to be living in Asia, maybe Thailand, Vietnam. I wasn't sure, but I wanted to go and visit these places that I've always heard about. It became a dream, and then it became an obsession to get there. So I spent the year planning this out. Wasn't sure, again, how it was going to turn out. I didn't have much money, but I knew that it had to happen. So I'll give you a little insight on intuition. So, listening to your intuitive heart is a very powerful thing. And one day, as I was planning my future and, kind of trying to figure out how I was going to put this whole thing together, my roommate brought home the newspaper, and I don't read the newspaper usually, never have read one, but except to check the comics and maybe, check the movies. But I just happened to pick up this newspaper, opened it up, and right there is an article that says, it's like an advertisement that says, "Teach English in Japan, hiring now." And I thought, That sounds like a great idea. Why don't I try that? So I sent them a resume, nice little cover letter, and within 30 days, they got back to me and said, "We want to meet you this week." And next thing I knew, I was in downtown Vancouver sitting in a fancy hotel with a Japanese businessman who was interviewing me for this position in Japan. And after the interview, um, I got a call the next day. Then they said, "We're very sorry, but we chose three people for the position, and you were number four, so you didn't get the job." It's like, okay, well, that's fine. That didn't change my plans. I was still going to do the thing and just get on a plane and you know probably I think I was going to go to Thailand or something and just start there. But a week later, they called me back and said, "Third guy dropped out, so you're in if you're interested." And I definitely was, and that was it. So the point of the story is that you make a decision for something, no matter what it is, and you don't need to know the whole why, but you just have to believe in it strongly enough that it's going to happen, and opportunities are going to start to pop up. That's always been my experience. Whenever I made a decision, I just decided this is what I want, and then the how showed up later, and I continued to just follow through with action. And as I pushed forward with this thing to achieve, whether it's a goal or an objective, eventually, I could have that thing, right? But it also the visualization was a big part of it. So I mentioned that I had this big visualization board up on my wall and everything, and I would just look at it every day, visualizing what it would be like to go visit these other cultures and do these other things. And at the time, I also wanted to be an author, but I was not really writing at the time, maybe just doing some journaling. And, the publishing came later, and I'll get into that in a second. But um, I did eventually come to Japan, and, a company set me up in a nice house and gave me a car. And I was making really good money, more money than I was making as an engineer in Canada. And I thought, this is great. This is like living the dream. I was traveling to these like exotic temples and all these things. And I thought, this is what I dreamt about. So I wanted more of that. And so I just dug in hard and managed to stay in Japan, and got hired by other companies to get my visa to stay longer. And that was it. Now, as I'm going through life, as we all do, I got to a point where I became restless again. And the restlessness is a key indicator that there's something in your life that you want to change. You may be hungry for a transformation. You want to do something different with your life. And I think this is where the human potential comes into play, because we're all capable of so much more than we're actually doing. No matter what it is, no matter who you are. I could even probably say this about maybe Elon Musk, who's achieved so much and he's built these companies and everything, but he's always striving for that next level, right? Now, some people may think that's not a healthy thing to do, but if you look at it, I mean, I want to be striving for the best version of myself, which may be 5 or 10 or 20 years from now. And I always want to be moving towards that objective or goal. And we'll call it a goal, but it's like a vision that I have. And everybody has this capability, to change their lives. And when I say change their lives, I mean, making not just making things better financially, which is a good thing, but mentally and physically as well. You can. I know people who have lost a lot of weight and they transformed their bodies, and they went into bodybuilding competitions, or they started health clubs and those kinds of things. So the transformation is a different path for everybody, but you have to decide what that's going to be for you. Because you have the potential, the human potential to you know take yourself to any level, and you're never going to be as good as you want to be in one lifetime. I think we may need several hundred or several thousand, I don't know, but at least in this life, you have a chance every day, because every day is a gift, to do whatever it is you want to do. So just going to circle back a little bit to when I started to get a little bit restless, I realized that, oh yeah, my other goal was to write a book and become an author. And that's always been a dream of mine since I was way back in high school, which is going back about 35 years. Right. And I did a lot of writing back in those days. I'd written fiction and science fiction books and things like that. But this time it was different. I wanted to write, books that were going to empower people to empower their own lives. So I started out, I just sat down one day with a pen and a paper, and I made a decision just to start writing something, and this is the other key, one of the other key factors I just want people to take away today is that we get stuck because we're not making a decision as to what we want, or we may know what we want, but we're not taking the first step to getting it. And sometimes it's just sitting down with, like in my case, it was a pen and paper, and I started writing a book. And then 3 years later, I had like 100,000 words ready, you know, but it had to start with something, right? So when I started putting this together, all these ideas just started pouring out of me. And I just spent like 2 or 3 years just creating content. Now, it wasn't like just showing up every day and writing a bunch of stuff. There was a lot of procrastination along the way, doubt and uncertainty. Should I be doing this? Is this a waste of time? But something told me, again, inside, I could just feel this, this energy inside of me just said, you've got to do this thing. And whenever you feel that, emotion inside, or you feel that if it's something that's speaking to you, and you know that it's the one thing that you always wanted to do, the tendency may be to ignore it, but I would pay attention to it, right? And when you pay attention to it, it gets stronger. And then you start to feel that there is more to this. There is more I could be doing with my life. There is more potential. And there's always, more potential things that I can be striving for. I don't have to stay in the job that I don't like. I don't have to stay in the relationship I don't like. I can move beyond anything. So that's just I think the core message that I carry in the writings that I create today with the content. But yeah, I started out with, I did publish my first book maybe back in 2012, 2013. It was a self-published book, as most of them are. But it only started that way because Amazon had just launched their self-publishing program. And I think I was one of the first authors maybe to jump in on that. And, nobody really knew what they were doing back then. There weren't any courses or, that Amazon had a few videos on it, maybe, they had their platform set up, but I was already there, and I'd hired an editor and cover designer. And the thing about this is that everything has a step-by-step process, like no matter what it is you're working on, so, I mean, you could be working on a book, you could be building a house, doesn't matter. You need to have a blueprint for it though. And it's okay to make that blueprint as you progress through the process. So, as I'm working on my first book, I found an editor and a cover designer, and I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just putting things together. But again, my vision was to publish a book that was going to help a lot of people. And that was it, and I did that. And then I did it again, and I did it again. And I just kept showing up. And I did more books because people were now contacting me saying, hey, we really I really like this book. I like what you said here. And I thought, okay, something might be working here, because I wasn't expecting to get feedback, from people who were emailing me saying, when's the next book coming out? Or how did you do this? Or can you teach this better? So that was really important, getting feedback from people and realizing that they were paying attention. So yeah, as time went on, I just continued on that path. And I think probably a decade later, I have a pretty good publishing business. We're still publishing books, and still helping a lot of people. But the thing is that I always keep in mind that there's always that the original goal was to help 10 million people, to elevate their potential, to show them the way that there is a better way that you could be living your life, even if you have a really good life right now, which is a good thing to have. But imagine how much, you could have something even greater. You could be happier. You could be, wealthier. You can be in better physical condition. There's always that next level. So if you feel stuck and you want to move forward, then there are several things that you can do. First of all, just take some time out for yourself. Sit down with pen and paper. You don't need any fancy tools. And just make a list of all the goals that anything, it's like a brain, it's like a brain dump. You just want to dump everything down on the page so you see what you got. And then from that list, choose 5 of those goals. And they can be anything. It could be, starting a garden in my backyard, or whatever it might be, but just write everything down on the page and then choose 5 of those goals. From those 5, choose three more. And from those three, choose the one thing. And this is what I did back in the day when I decided to, travel the world and later on write books. I narrowed it down to three, and those were two. And the third one was actually just to become, the greatest potential for myself. I wanted to build a new identity, and I wanted to, like experience something that was just that nobody else had experienced before. That was the other goal, I guess. And I had started with that probably that and the traveling, but again, I focused in on that, got clear on the steps that I needed, and I didn't know the how or how it was going to turn out. I just knew that I had to do this thing. So again, just suggesting to people to make that list, choose that goal, and then make a list of the action steps that you would need to achieve it. You don't need to know everything. You just need to have like one, two, five, 10 steps. And these can be small steps. It could be like something simple as researching something or calling somebody or whatever it is to get that momentum. Because that's the one thing that a lot of people are missing is they need the momentum and they need to take action on just one thing just to get that energy moving forward. And then do one more thing and one more thing. You do one thing every day for a year. You've done 365 steps towards that goal, right? And these don't have to be, it might be something you need to spend 5, 10 minutes a day, depending on the task you're working on. So, but that's just it. You just need that clarity. Clarity is the key. So.
Okay, everybody, it's Michael E. Cullen II.
And I'm Sesame and Carta from the All Too Real 2 podcast. We're passionate about movies, TV, and pretty much all things pop culture.
Dive into the chaos of failed sitcoms, direct-to-video sequels, and the quirky realms of cinema and TV.
Join us every Thursday for your dose of All Too Real 2 entertainment.
We'll guide you through debates like whether Howard the Duck qualifies as a superhero.
Ponder if Larry the Cable Guy could be the new Rock or Schwarzenegger.
Discover if some shows and movies should have stayed in the cutting room.
Ever heard of a sitcom featuring that dictator with the funny mustache? Well, we watched it.
We're dedicated to unraveling the peculiarities of pop culture, sometimes with awesome guests.
So, if you're into the eccentric world of pop culture,
listen and subscribe to All Too Real 2.
Available wherever you find podcasts
and on Age of Radio.
Can you explain the concept of doing the hard things first and how that contributes to personal and business success?
Yes, absolutely. So that book came about a few years ago, Do the Hard Things First, because it came about through my own experience with a lifetime of what I would classify as chronic procrastination. I think I didn't come up with that, of course. That's a term used in psychology, but chronic procrastination was, I would procrastinate on everything, like just delaying anything that was hard, because to do it or even to think about it caused anxiety and overwhelm, which are two things that are difficult to deal with. And when we feel those things, we want to escape from that, turning on TV for hours at a time or participating in a bad habit, an addictive habit, whatever your escape is, So my chronic procrastination got to the point where, everybody procrastinates on something. I mean, that's just, especially when we have resistance or, there's something new that we're working towards, there will be that initial resistance where of course, you may not want to do it, but you know that you have to get it done, or if you do it, there's going to be something better on the other side. But with chronic procrastination, it was just give you a quick story. So about 5 years ago, I had a credit card bill due, and it wasn't that much. It was like $1,000 maybe. So I had a few credit cards, and the bill usually came direct out of my bank account. So, it was always paid, and I always paid my bills. But this one card was not linked to my account. So the bank would send me the statements in the mail. And I never used this card before, just a couple of times. So when the statements came through, the first couple of statements, I would just kind of toss them to the side and I ignored them, right? And the statements kept coming. And probably within 45 to 60 days, they were getting a little more urgent, right? Now they were in Japanese, but I could still read the language. It's basically like pay us now or else. And what happened after 3 months of procrastinating on doing this thing, and this would have been a very easy thing to take care of. I just had to drive across town to the bank and walk into the bank and pay the bill. That would have taken care of it. And within 3 months, they had sent me a final letter stating that not only had they canceled that card, but they canceled my credit and everything that went with it. So that came about as a result of my procrastinating, ignoring the situation for no reason at all, because it could have been easily handled, with a little bit of work. But it was a form of self-sabotage, which I realized was a big character defect of mine. It still creeps up on me every now and then. And as a result, yes, lost all my credit, which is a big deal because all of my business, for the most part, is online, and I need online credit to pay for everything. So it put me in put my business at risk and all kinds of things. But um, good news is, a few years later, I got my credit back and got everything restored and all that. But the point is that that was just one of the situations where chronic procrastination got in the way, um, you know, had a negative impact on my business and my lifestyle. And that's the thing, is like, do the hard things first came from that experience, but it was also, I started recognizing it in other things as well. Now, with the do the hard things first, it is a series of books now. The fourth one's coming out in a few months. But each of these books, they focus on a specific pain point that a lot of people deal with, like how to overcome bad habits, how to master self-control. The first one is on how to overcome procrastination. And that's just a very, that book in and of itself was translated into, yes, about 16 languages now, because I realized, well, it wasn't just a pain point that I was going through. It seems to be a big pain point for a lot of people, because I was getting, again, a lot of questions about it. Not everybody loved the book. Some people were really put off by it. I think because maybe it triggers something in them that they didn't like. It was a hard book to write, because I had to look into a lot of my own personal defects and why I would procrastinate on these things. Now, I think I'd been relatively successful with publishing books and things like that, but there were certain things that I just absolutely didn't want to do, and I could feel that resistance. Part of it was, give you another example, filling out application forms. I don't know what it was, but whenever I had an application form that came in through the mail, um, I would just throw it in the corner and say, I'll do it later, or I'll do it tomorrow. And these are trigger points as well. Like when it comes to doing the hard things first, one of the reasons that we don't do hard things is because we want to look for the path of least resistance. Is really that's by default. Most people merge towards that path. We take that path because it's less scary. It's more certain, we can predict the outcome, right? But by doing hard things, ideally in the morning. So this is I'll just run you through a little process here. Is that what I do every night before bed is I'll write down the three things that I'm going to work on the next day. And I will tackle these in the morning because, first of all, your energy is high in the morning. It should be anyway. So your energy is at an all-time high. I have a good morning routine. I get up relatively early, get in a little bit of exercise, get some protein into me, some fresh air, and then I'm ready to go. But your energy is really high. So you want to spend that time on one or two of the hard things, because if you nail these and get these done, first of all, it's not going to make your whole day easy, but it's going to be easier. Like, you're going to get your things done, and then you're going to be able to focus more on your other work, right? Give an example, actually. So one of my hard things to do actually is writing. It's one of those things where, although I've put out quite a few books, I still procrastinate on it. But it's my first thing that I will do every morning is write 1,000 words. And I have to make it my hard thing to do. Now, after I've done it, 1,000 times, it's not as hard as it used to be, right? but there are other hard things that will pop up. Sometimes there are emergencies that need to be handled, and if and the thing is if you don't do the hard things, there will be consequences later on, and that is relating back to the credit card incident. The consequences of that, I was delaying everything. I was like, oh, I'll do it later, do it tomorrow, and it's always like, you're stuck in that moment of immediate gratification. I don't want to do it right now because it's really hard. So I'm just going to watch TV or watch Netflix or whatever it may be, play with the dog. But those things that you're avoiding have very serious consequences later on, depending on what it may be. And I think one of the greater consequences, the negative consequence, is the fact that you're not going to level up. You're not going to reach your, a potential. I mean, our potential is unlimited, so there's never, there's not a ceiling to it. But I mean, you're not going to be able to take yourself to that new level if you're not doing the hard things required to get there. Because it may seem scary in the beginning, but that's only fear showing up in the beginning, and you have to do it scared. Which I think is a great concept. Susan Jeffers wrote the book Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. One of my favorite books. That was back in the day. It was one of the first books that I'd read, I think, for self-help. So I had this ingrained in my system, like, I'm feeling scared about getting on a plane and moving to another country, but I'm going to do it anyway. Now, again, there are other things that would pop up where I would procrastinate on those and push them aside because, it led to, I guess, like the fear of failure also came in there as well, which is part of, I have a book on fail big, but I brought that in to do the hard things first. Part of it was, again, we avoid doing the hard things because we're afraid of failing at something. There's the uncertainty that it's not going to work out. There's no guarantee. And I realized, like, that's just the way life is. I mean, there'll never be a guarantee for anything. The only guarantee is that if you don't do something difficult that's going to get you to the next level, you're going to stay the same or you're going to decline. If everything is moving towards chaos, which it constantly is, systems always they break, and people get older and everything's moving towards chaos, but that doesn't mean that you have to let it happen, right? So what I'd recommend is just making a similar to the list that I would make for my goals. I also make a list of the hard things that I'm putting off every day. And I still do it with certain things in my business, things that I need to build out for a website, or, emails I need to send, and just things like that I'm putting off because it's not that it's a difficult thing, but maybe first of all, I don't know how to do it. So my excuse is, well, I don't know how to do this thing, so I'm just going to wait until tomorrow or something like that. But if that's the case, then you just have to break it down really and look at, do some self analysis, become self aware of why you're not working on it to begin with. So I actually will take some time out to meditate and think on it, right? So this is another kind of meditation where you're clearing your mind of all thoughts. I think it's the form of creative visualization or creative meditation where I sit down and I will just think about this thing that I'm delaying. And when I do, I visualize myself working on it. I visualize myself solving the problem or the issue. And then I see myself later having achieved this hard thing that I was working on. And that's the thing, is that if you can create the emotion in the future of what it looks like and feels like to have actually done this thing, then, your body doesn't, your subconscious doesn't know the difference between, what's happened and, what hasn't happened yet. Right. So you're going to be able to create that future for yourself. And that's actually a big key right there, is just sitting down, visualizing yourself working on it, seeing yourself getting it done, feeling what it's like to have actually achieved it. And now you're ready to go to work. So doing the hard things begins with identifying, what it is you're putting off. Not so much the why. I mean, there could be a lot of reasons why, like, yes, there's fear involved. I don't know how to do it, whatever it may be. But if it's something you don't know how to do, let's just start with that. Doesn't always mean that you have to be the one who's, doing the hard work. So let's just say if you own a business, for example, And, in the business, there are multiple skill sets that someone has to learn, in order to run things. But, and I've had this all the time where I got stuck in my own business because I didn't know how to do something. So I just put it off, like building our website, for example. And it's like, how am I going to build this website? How can I put this together? And I realized I was asking the wrong question. It's more like, who can I hire to do this thing? Um, and I think that came from a great book, Who Not How by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. Who Not How really changed a lot of the things for how I do hard things, because I realized, like, well, maybe if it's something that I can just outsource, then it doesn't matter how it gets done. The only thing that we need to figure out is the solution to getting it finished or to getting it completed. Right? So that's just a really good key point right there, is that whenever you're up against a wall, clarify whether it's something you need to work on. Is there a skill you need to move forward? If there is, what is that skill? So again, clarity, identifying what the skill is, and then learning that skill and moving forward. But not just taking in information. You have to, learn a bit of the skill, take action, and move forward. Learn more, take action, and impact. Because yeah, just knowledge in and of itself is a good thing, but you have to implement and put it into practice, right? So yeah, but that's the thing, just identify if you're the one that needs to do it, or you can hire it out. And what I realize is that there's a lot of things that I can outsource. Whether you go on Fiverr or you hire someone on Upwork or you hire someone locally. It could be. I have a friend. I'll just give you a quick story. So a friend of mine, his house was always in disarray. It was all had clutter everywhere, and it was very dirty. And I just said to him one day, why don't you just, if you hate cleaning so much, and he was always procrastinating on the cleaning. And he was like, when he would get something and he would just throw it in another room, and every room just became this big clutter box. And he had a big house, right? So, but I just said one day, if you don't want to clean, you hate cleaning, hire someone for it, and he was putting it off because he didn't want to spend $500 on cleaning, but it's like, you're going to get it, you're going to get it done. And that's what he did. A crew came in on the weekend, cleaned it up, got rid of most of the clutter. They either threw stuff out or they sold it. And within a few days, it was, it was like a new house. It was done. But the thing is, he had put that off for years, like cleaning the house and doing things. And now just every few months, he'll just, because again, one of the reasons we don't do hard things is because it's something we really hate to do. But it has to be done. If you need to get something done to move forward, again, like, you just have to figure out the solution to getting it done. It doesn't mean you have to be the one to do it. So that's just an important thing that I want to bring up, because there's no reason that we need to be stuck. Yes, delaying difficult things is just a part of our nature, right? But that's also where the growth is as well, because what you'll realize is by taking action towards things that are difficult and achieving that solution is going to fill you with energy. You're going to be more motivated now, right? And motivation, by the way, is something that, a lot of people wait for the motivation to show up, right? It's like, well, I'll do it when I feel like it, right? And the thing is, like with most things that are difficult, we never really feel like doing it. My car breaks down and I'm not one to, fix cars, for example. So that's another thing where, like, I would take it to the repair shop, of course. But if I sat around trying to figure out how to fix it, I would never get it done, and I certainly wouldn't feel like fixing it. That's just an example, but that you can use that for anything, right? So we have to get over our feelings of, not wanting to do it and just try to make it more practical where, like, I need to get this done. How am I going to get it done? And who can I get to help me with it? Right. So if you can just follow that process there, you can pretty much, work on anything. Just going back to the website thing, we finally got the website's finished, but I hired somebody to do it, put it together, and I'm just more of a consultant. But that's the thing, is that I identified something like that was something that we needed, but it wasn't something that I had to do myself. So I just made a list of all the things that went into the project, got someone on board to help with that. And then we just started doing one thing at a time, and that's just like, every day you can just check things off on your checklist. So, but yeah,
Okay.
anyway, I'll just leave it there in case you have a follow-up question.
Yeah, I just wanted you to give out your contact information so people can keep up with everything you're up to because we're almost out of time.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So, yes, you can certainly go to Amazon and check out the books there at Scott Allan Books or scottallanauthor.com. And you can go to scottallanpublishing.com where we have the books and some free downloads there. And at scottallanbooks.com is the Shopify store where we sell everything directly. And we'll be having some very cool merchandising up there for sale as well pretty soon. So check that out. And by the way, we're putting together the course for Do the Hard Things First, and that will be ready by June. So just want to know if you wanted to take things to the next level, you can always check that out.
Absolutely, ladies and gentlemen. ScottAllanPublishing.com. Appreciate having him on. Follow, rate, review, share this episode to as many people as possible. If you have any guests or suggestion topics, cjackson102 at cox.net is the place to send them. As always, thank you for listening. And Scott, thank you for joining us and sharing your expertise.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Have a great day.
For more information on the Living the Dream podcast, visit www.djcurveball.com. Until next time, stay focused on living the dream.